9 million acres of forest, 1,700 miles of continuous shoreline, 4,300 lakes, 12,000 miles of streams, more than 300 waterfalls, 15 counties, 2 time zones, and 1 area code. Welcome to the Upper Peninsula. Welcome to 906 Outdoors. I've been to the Porcupine Mountains several times, but never during the winter.
Yeah, the park's a very different place in the winter time.
Different indeed.
The access to a lot of the park is pretty difficult. South Boundary Road and the majority of 107 going up to Lake of the Clouds are groomed snowmobile trails.
I figured it was time to check it out. The usual back and forth of cars to and from scenic points of interest are non-existent. On this trip, my destination wasn't any of the usual hot spots, and away we go. And my list of things to do didn't include any of the typical activities. It's the end of winter, so this was my last chance for some cross-country skiing and a very, very quiet night in a yurt.
So our ski trail system here in the park, our groomed cross-country ski trail system's about 20 miles in length, and there is everything from fairly flat, to somewhat beginner level trails to some black diamond, more expert level trails. There's a lot of topography here in the park, so don't think that you're going to get a lot of flat trails here in the park because there's not a lot of those. The park does groom the trails, and kind of the way we've been grooming them lately is we'll track set one side for the classic skiers out there, and then we'll groom the other portion of the track, which is about an 8-foot wide path, and we'll groom that flat. People can snowshoe on there. We've had people bring their fat tire bikes on the trail. Some people will even do some skate skiing on those trails as well. So a little bit of a winter multi-purpose use for all non-motorized vehicles. So there's some pretty nice trails here in the park. There's some really scenic areas to stop at, like West Vista and East Vista, and anything down along the lake shore can be really, really nice. And the trails also go into some of the old growth forest too, like the Deer Yard Trail. You can ski along the big, tall, beautiful hemlock trees in there. It can be there's some really nice skiing here.
Well, a little stop at White Birch Cabin, a warming shelter along the way. Not much use in building a fire today, plenty warm, but what a great place to stop for lunch. Probably the best tasting leftover venison salami I've ever had. In the distance, I can see Lake Superior, which means I'm probably not far from my yurt. So next stop from here, Union Bay Yurt. That right there would be home. 906 Outdoors is brought to you in part by the Island Resort and Casino.
Bet America Sportsbook at Island Resort and Casino.
Some of the more beginner level trails would be like the shorter, the Superior Loop Trail, which is a little over a mile in distance, and there's not a lot of terrain on that one. A real scenic, shorter route would be the Deer Yard Trail. That's the one that part of the trail goes down into some of the old growth forest. There's a few pretty good hills on that trail, but it's real scenic, and it's not a real long one. Another more kind of a beginner level trail would be like the Nonesuch Trail, which ties into a kind of a real popular loop in the park. You can start at the ski chalet. Sometimes people will pay like to get a one-time lift pass to ride up the ski lift, which takes them to the top of the ski hill, and you can pick up the trails, both the double and the triple cross-country ski trails you can access from the top of the hill. And then you can ski down. You can stop like at East Vista along your way, and then you can go along what we call the log camp loop or the river trail loop, which is kind of a nice thing about that is that, starting at the top of the ski hill, it's almost a complete downhill ride for the next 5-6 miles to get you back to the ski chalet. So there's several different loops that you can do in the park, and there's, as I said before, there's some really nice skiing opportunities here in the Porcupine Mountains, and we get pretty reliable snow, so pretty generally the skiing really picks up usually right around between Christmas and New Year's, sometime around there, and can easily go into through February, and honestly sometimes March can be one of our better ski months of the year. There's not a lot of people out. We get a little more tolerable temperatures on the trails, and we generally still have pretty good snow at that time.
After a bit of settling in, it was time for some sightseeing. The Lake Superior shoreline anywhere is sure to reveal something unique. So I grabbed the camera gear, threw on the skis, and headed down the shoreline.
Yeah, the park's a very different place in the winter time. The access to a lot of the park is pretty difficult. So South Boundary Road and the majority of 107 going up to Lake of the Clouds are groomed snowmobile trails. So they're not, you can't drive up to Lake of the Clouds in your car this time of year. You can't drive to Summit Peak. You can either go in by snowmobile or you can, hike, snowshoe, ski into some of these areas. The place is different also, that it looks a lot different in the wintertime, when you got the snow cover, especially like right now, there's so much ice, out on Lake Superior, that tends to appeal to a lot of people. They'll go down along the shoreline, they'll check out the really neat ice mounds that build up along the shore. You can get, in just the right conditions where if there's some open water and you got the waves splashing up, they can create some of these, these big ice mounds, right in front of you. And it's definitely just such a different place in the wintertime.
Well, after a mile skiing with a 900-pound backpack loaded with way too much gear, followed by an afternoon of skiing up and down the Lake Superior shoreline, one thing for certain, I'm hungry. On tonight's menu, homemade venison Creole sausage. I'm guessing by now you've come to the conclusion that I like food. Or maybe that I like to cook. Part of both, I guess, but not really any more than the next guy. There's just something about cooking over a fire, or on a wood stove, or even a gas camp stove. On any camping adventure, one of the first things I plan is the menu. And cooking it up is one of my greatest anticipations of the trip. There's been a lot of trips where I can't remember what I saw, but I remember every meal. The fire, the pan, the food, it's all part of it for sure. But I think the most important ingredient is where you eat. Whether it's venison or fish in a cast iron pan or a pasty in tinfoil, everything tastes better when you're eating in the outdoors.
Winter recreations, when they're coming here to the park in the wintertime, find it's a little bit different than in the summertime. You know, typically you got to hike into the cabins here in the Porkies, where in the wintertime, the majority of our cabins and yurts that are available in the winter to rent are on our cross-country ski trail systems. And they're as far around a mile to upwards of a little over 3 miles.
Day 2 begins with the welcome sound of a pot of coffee perking on the wood stove and sunshine.
Yurts and cabins in the wintertime, we provide all the firewood. There's a wood-burning stove in all of those units.
A little bit of pure UP goodness in there.
There's pots and pans, there's plates and utensils, there's a coffee pot. But you want to bring anything, any type of a consumable item.
This morning's menu, I picked up a couple sweet rolls on the way here. Sweet roll French toast.
There's no light or electricity at any of these things, so you're going to want to bring some small, battery-powered lanterns, because it gets dark a lot earlier in the wintertime. The difference between a yurt and a cabin in the wintertime is maybe not as great as people think. They'll look at a yurt and they'll think, boy, that thing looks pretty flimsy. But the funny thing is, the yurts actually warm up really fast. We got the wood stoves in there, and they heat up really, really quick inside there. So you do got to be a little bit careful. Don't get it going too hot, because you're gonna sweat yourself out. A lot of the park is a lot more desolate in the wintertime. You don't see nearly as many tracks of animals or people, but some people do come. They'll go backcountry camping, they'll get on their snowshoes or their skis, and they'll head out into the more remote areas of the park. Oftentimes people try to get up onto the escarpment or some of the more inaccessible locations in the park. Yeah, definitely have a backup plan. Maybe don't, you can have your adventurous plan and then have a little backup plan if you find that the conditions for traveling are a lot more difficult than what you anticipated. Either the cabins or the yurts are they're $68 a night. You can reserve them online, or you can call the 1-800 number. It's 1-800-44-PARKS. Make your reservation, because these winter cabins and yurts are really popular, especially around weekends. So you can reserve them as much as 6 months in advance, and I highly recommend doing that, because they can be really, really difficult to get into, because it's pretty popular. People do like to come here in the wintertime, and it's such a unique experience. Skiing or snowshoeing into one of these cabins. There's just not a lot of places you can do something like that. And if you're getting out on the trails, there's no fee to use the ski trails here in the park. You just need your recreation passport, on your vehicle. So if you don't have that, just stop here at headquarters. The park is open daily from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., weekends as well. So just stop in, pick up the permits, the passes that you need, and head on out. Enjoy the trails.
Well, it was time to pack up and hit the trail. Spending a night in a yurt is just one of those things you need to do. And the Porcupine Mountains is sure a nice place to do it. Spring, summer, fall or winter, there's always a way to get out and experience nature. To experience the UP. Grab a backpack, throw in some camping gear and food, and disappear for a couple of days. Maybe it's the Porkies, or maybe a mile from your house. It's much more about point B than the distance between that and point A. The UP is loaded with unique and special places where you can very easily get lost for a couple of days. Pick a spot, set up camp, and make the day about where you're at, not where you should be. In the UP, getting lost is easy. The hard part is convincing yourself to find your way out. Today's show is brought to you in part by Rapid River Knife Works, home of Michigan's largest custom knife factory showroom.
We haven't done anything like this. It's definitely a very different experience, especially this loop out here. You know, some nights when the moon is high and you've got some moonlight coming through, all these birch trees around us just kind of glow silver. It can make for a really interesting experience out here.
A unique way to experience the Upper Peninsula wilderness is at night, hiking down a snow-covered trail marked by the warm glow from old-fashioned lanterns.
These old-fashioned kerosene lanterns don't light up the whole trail. They just kind of light up stretches of the trail, and that's pretty magical.
The sights and sounds of the woods at night, breathing in the cold, fresh air will awaken your senses and give you a whole new appreciation for winter. If you need one more reason to visit the Porcupine Mountain Wilderness State Park, this is it.
Tonight we are lighting up our lanterns for our Saturday night lantern ski and snowshoe event. So we do this every Saturday night. We usually start between Christmas and New Year's depending on conditions, and then we'll run it through the end of February. And between the hours of 6 and 9 o'clock every Saturday night, we light up these lanterns along this 1 mile loop of trail, and we have a bonfire going out here. We'll have hot refreshments, and you can ski or snowshoe the trail and stop by the fire and have a roast a marshmallow or have a nice hot drink and just enjoy a great way to spend a Saturday night in the UP in the winter. This is a trail that we call the Superior Loop. It's part of our groomed cross-country ski trail system that we have in the park, and it's a little over a 1 mile loop that starts up by the road. You start the trail basically right across the road from where the entrance to the ski hill is, and then you ski down and it makes a loop. And out here at the warming shelter, this is about the halfway point around the Superior Loop. It's a nice loop. It's not a real difficult trail.
I caught up with park interpreter and naturalist Bob Wild as he prepared for the final lantern-lit trail event of the season.
So right now there's about 65 lanterns out on this loop. They're kind of spread out. Some places they're a little closer together. You know, if they're more difficult stretches of trail, I'll have more lanterns, you know, where there's curves or downhills. But if it's a long, straight, flat, narrow stretch, I'll spread the lanterns out a little bit further there so people can get a little bit more of the kind of the night experience, you know, going from lantern to lantern. And I love the light that they give off out here. And in all honesty, most people who come out here now have headlamps. The lanterns are I'm probably more for ambiance really than anything. I always light these red ones first. They're the longest burning of the lanterns that I have. And I'll light kind of the first half of the lanterns, and I'll come out here and I'll get the fires. I'll chop some firewood, get everything shoveled out and get stuff ready, and then I'll go light the last of the lanterns, usually around 5 o'clock to have everything ready by 6:30. I do like the TP method for getting the fire going out there. We got more comments on the fact that there's cushions on these things. It's like, oh, This is so nice. I'd say, during decent conditions, we probably average between 60 and 80 people out here. This weekend last year, we had about 220 people come out on it. So it can be pretty busy out here. But yet there's nights when if the wind's really howling and it's not very nice, that not nearly that many people come out. But I've never been skunked. I've always had people come out on it. Most people will snowshoe out here. Some people still ski. When I started doing the program about 14 years ago, it was a lot more skiers who were coming out than what it is now. Now it's I'd say probably 60% of the people coming out are snowshoeing. A pretty good portion of people are skiing. And then some people just simply walk out here in their boots, on the trail. Our groomers pack the trail pretty hard. It's usually pretty firm out here, so you can even walk just in your boots. Put your swampers on and come on out. Sometimes you'll hear some woodpeckers or some owls out here calling after it gets dark, and sometimes you can maybe catch some deer crossing the trail out in front of you, or see some tracks, maybe a coyote had, crossed the trail. Oh, and we got pileated woodpeckers chiming in.
Other sounds were the crunching of snowshoes, the crackling of the campfire, and folks enjoying each other's company on a beautiful winter night. Mark your calendar to spend a Saturday night in the Porkies, or one of our many other state parks that create this lantern-lit experience.
Boy, it's a great way to spend the evening in the wintertime. Come on out and it'll be a fun night, I'm sure of that.